Have you ever grabbed a coffee or a tea and seen that eco-friendly label on the cup? It gives you a little warm, fuzzy feeling, right? But have you also had that little voice in the back of your head that goes, is it really? Well, today we are going to dive deep into that exact feeling. Okay, so let's get right into it. Now, this diagram might look a little intense at first, but don't worry. It's basically a roadmap for the journey our brain takes when we see a company's green claim. And the whole thing was based on a recent study that used a perfect, everyday example to figure this out.
Milk teacups.
So first things first, let's set the scene here, because before we can even get into the psychology of it all, you have to understand the sheer scale of this problem. We're talking about a gigantic industry that pretty much runs on things you use once and then throw away.
Yeah, you heard that right. Almost $9 billion. Just think about what that means. That's a mind-boggling number of disposable cups being used and tossed out every single day all around the world. We're talking a massive environmental footprint.
And here's the catch, the big gap between what companies say and what's real. The research highlights that most of those so-called paper cups have to have a thin plastic lining, which basically makes them a nightmare to recycle. And all those fancy plastic cups with the little green logos? Yeah, a whole lot of them never actually see the inside of a recycling plant.
So, let's get to the good stuff. When you're holding that cup and you see that eco label, but your gut is telling you something's off, what is actually going on inside your head? This is where the psychology gets really, really interesting.
There is an official name for this, and it's called greenwashing. It's all about that gap between what a company claims about being green and what it actually does. And honestly, those labels on the milk teacups, they're a textbook example.
So what happens when your brain flags this inconsistency? It creates this very specific kind of mental itch, this discomfort. And luckily for us, researchers have a couple of really powerful theories that explain exactly what happens next.
The researchers in the study really leaned on two big ideas. On one hand, you've got cognitive dissonance theory. That explains the uncomfortable internal tug-of-war you feel. And on the other hand, you've got the attitude-behavior-context theory, which is all about how that feeling eventually turns into you actually doing something.
And here's the brilliant part, how they stitch these two ideas together. Think of it like this. Cognitive dissonance is what kicks the whole thing off. It's that initial psychological gut punch. And then the ABC model explains what happens after that punch lands. So, put simply, one theory explains the feeling, and the other explains what you do about it.
Okay, so that little feeling of discomfort you get from a bogus claim, well, it doesn't just vanish into thin air. Nope, it grows. It actually hardens into a very specific and measurable attitude. And that attitude has a name: green skepticism. It's the direct result of that cognitive dissonance we were just talking about. It's the moment your brain officially switches from, something feels a little off here, to, you know what, I actively doubt what this company is telling me.
In fact, this is one of the exact statements the researchers used in their study to measure this skepticism. See, it's not just some vague feeling, it's a concrete, real doubt about whether that company is actually responsible.
And listen, this is not just a hunch. The data from the study was crystal clear. It confirmed a direct, powerful link. The more people sense that a company is greenwashing, the more skeptical they become. Those misleading labels are scientifically proven to create distrust.
Now, this brings us to what I think is the most powerful finding in this whole study. We know greenwashing makes us skeptical, but what's the final push? What's the trigger that takes someone from just feeling skeptical to actually doing something, like telling all their friends to stay away?
Seriously, think about it for a second. You might doubt a company's claims, but you might buy their stuff anyway. What would it take for you to go out of your way to actively tell people, don't buy this? Well, the study found a very specific and frankly, very powerful answer. The tipping point is health. The moment consumers start to worry about a personal health risk from that product, it's like throwing gasoline on the fire. It acts as this incredible amplifier, and that is the context piece of that ABC theory we talked about. It completely changes the game. And we're not talking about some abstract idea here. The study measured this by asking people about very real gut-level concerns. Things like feeling nervous about chemicals or tiny bits of plastic, microplastics, leaching from the cup right into your drink. It takes this big, fuzzy environmental issue and makes it deeply personal. And check this out.
This graph from the study shows you that tipping point in action. See that dotted line shooting up? That shows that as the worry about health risk gets higher, the power of greenwashing to make someone complain gets way stronger. Health concerns are the ultimate trigger. It's that simple.
All right, let's bring it all home. Let's recap this whole psychological journey, all the way from just seeing a cup to deciding to tell everyone about it.
Here's the whole chain reaction, step by step. It all starts with the greenwashing claim. That creates that internal conflict, the dissonance. That conflict then solidifies into real skepticism. And then, the catalyst, your concern for your own health, supercharges that skepticism, and that leads directly to you wanting to spread the bad word.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Well, first, greenwashing isn't just clever marketing, it backfires. It actively creates distrust. Second, that distrust is a one-way street to bad reviews. But here's the most important part. When you mix that distrust with a personal health scare, you have the perfect recipe for a major consumer backlash. For businesses, the lesson couldn't be clearer. Just be honest and make sure your stuff is safe.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. Now that you know about the hidden psychology at play, the next time someone hands you a cup with a cute little green leaf on it, what's going to go through your mind? And what will it take for you to actually believe the claim?